All right. And we are live. That's it. We are live at Keep Talking 365. And I'm back for another episode of Keep Talking 365, the podcast. Now, last time I did this was about 2 weeks ago, and I hit a couple of sports topics. I hit a couple of political topics. I don't know if you guys take any umbrage from what I'm saying, but, if anything, I'm out there. If you guys want to talk about a certain specific topic, you can contact me at keeptalking365 at Gmail. I also have a TikTok account at Let's Talk 1972. That's my TikTok account. And I also have a Facebook group, Keep Talking 369, the Facebook group. And, as this thing grows, hopefully grows bigger and bigger is what I'm trying to do here. Maybe, we get a big community going and we could just keep talking about stuff instead of fighting. You know what I'm trying to say? But tonight you're gonna get. I had been writing stuff down all week, and I always take notes, and I always say, I'm gonna come down here to my little podcast room, I guess you call it. My little slice of heaven down here, where I hang all my memorabilia and stuff, and I get to hang out and just kind of think about stuff I want to do for this thing and how I could get it going. Because I think eventually one day I can be pretty damn good at this. But this week you're gonna get a little bit of sports. I mean, it's gonna be a little bit of Debbie Downer day because I got two stories that I want to talk about. I'm gonna talk about. I watched a documentary the other night. I'm just strolling through Amazon Prime, and I'm just looking for something different. And I did a video a couple of weeks ago. Where I spoke about CTE a couple of weeks ago, and I came upon the Lew Carpenter story. So I'm gonna go over that and how CTE affected their lives. I'm going to go over. I made a video about Veterans Day. I have some thoughts about that. I'm going to talk about my dad a little bit tonight. I don't know where that's going to go, but I just have some stuff I want to talk about and get off my chest a little bit. And I really get off my chest, but it's been about a year and a half since he's passed, and I just want to talk about a couple of things I've been thinking about. So it's going to be a little bit of sports and a little bit of you want to talk about some stuff. It's going to be a little bit of talk about CTE and veteran stuff. So first off, I want to get to a topic that no Jet fan really wants to talk about because the Jet season is pretty much, I guess, you could look at the Jet season right now we'll look at the next year. Now, if I'm a Jet fan, my whole life, I tell you the stories. It's always next year. It's always next year, next year, next year. So I kind of have to look at it from this point as, next year might bring us something good or it may not. But what we did do this year is we dismantled a Jet team that was just playing horribly. We're not coached well. We're not disciplined. Name your thing that, infects a bad football team. And that's what the Jets have. They have a coach that kind of looks lost at times, in Aaron Glenn. I loved Aaron Glenn as a player. He was, I don't know, he was fierce. He was a good cornerback. He played well. But you want to look at this Jets team now, and it's just they can't get out of their own way. It's like they have a coach that wants to come in there and coach the players. You got Sauce Gardner gone, Quentin Williams gone. These are two players right now that are going to help their prospective teams. You saw Quentin Williams the other night. He went to Dallas. He played great. A couple of sacks. He's happy. Dallas's offense is playing on all cylinders. So you know what? He might have a home there. Maybe, you know what? He's not going to win a Super Bowl with the Jets because the Jets are never going to win a Super Bowl until, what I say, until Joe Namath dies. But that's in a past video. But the fact that those two got out of here. Now, first, I didn't want Quentin Williams to go, but he's going to a different team and he's going to be happy. And it's a possibility he might make the playoffs. Dak Prescott's playing great. That whole team's playing great right now. They got a new coach. We didn't think that he was going to be a good coach. But you know what, though? The guy seems to be turning out all right. His dad was a good offensive mind, and he seems to be as well. Sauce Gardner went to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Sauce Gardner, I didn't like from the get-go. He had a pretty good first season as a rookie. I got to be honest with you. But as the seasons and as the games dragged on, I saw him not really being the player that would really get himself into the mix. Good coverage guy, calls himself Sauce, second season. But I saw himself running away from tackles. I saw himself not really being present on the field, making dumb penalties. Everybody got on us and said that we are getting a generational cornerback. Sauce Gardner is not a generational cornerback. As a matter of fact, his first game last week with the Indianapolis Colts, he actually sent them into overtime by tripping in coverage. So that's how they got the 2-point conversion. Hence, the Indianapolis Colts went to overtime. But with Sauce Gardner gone, with Quentin Williams gone, the Jets have a plethora of picks right now. So the Jets in 2026, which is next year, and we're going to talk about next year because this weekend they're playing the Baltimore Ravens, and I got to be honest with you, the Baltimore Ravens are going to beat the living shit out of them. I see. Listen, we all know how it works. The Jets got fight. They're football players. You know, it is what it is. But you know what? This football team right here is playing for next season. And the coach is playing his players to see who is going to fit in his schemes. He's going to see what happens when he should fire the entire staff, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams, everybody just go, let Aaron Glenn pull some people in. I know he pulled in the offensive coordinator, but I got to be honest with you, that guy came over there as an assistant and he looks lost at times. Not saying that the Jets have a good team to build around. I mean, their offensive line, okay. Their running game, Brees Hall's playing pretty well. You know, the other kid's been injured here and there, but I think the running game is where the Jets are lacking. They're lacking everywhere else. They're lacking at defense now because both of their top defensive players are gone. So that's going to be a problem. So draft coming in next year, what do we do? So in 2026, the Jets got their first round pick, which I can only hope is going to be a top 3 pick. Then they got Indianapolis's first round pick for the Sauce trade. Now, this could work out for the Jets, but if you know in the past, the Jets are not good at making draft picks. They draft players that are supposed to be good and they never pan out. Listen, Brees Hall, he's a good running back, but is he going to pan out to be what they thought he was going to be? Sauce Gardner, they drafted him same year. Is he going to be who we thought he was going to be? The one guy who I think is going to shine, but you got to get the right person to throw him the football is Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is being quiet. He's being very mature about this whole process because I think he feels that maybe something down the line is going to happen. You got some good draft picks coming out next year. You know, being a Jet fan right now, and I know Jet fans are watching college football. Now, college football, to me, I lost a lot of luster. I went off on a tangent a couple of weeks ago about how Penn State, what I think about Penn State, and that kind of like lost my luster for college football. But I'm going to have to be forced as a Jet fan to start watching some of these football teams. Now, listen, we all know that there's 3 quarterbacks out there that people are going to be going for. Okay. Now, these are the quarterbacks of Jets that should be investing in, I guess, watching or seeing, you know, what they can do or seeing if they're tough. Okay. Obviously, it's an obvious, probably, I don't know how obvious it's going to be because of the fact that he hasn't really played the same competition as the other 2 guys, but Fernando Mendoza looks like a stud. Now, Indiana, they're undefeated right now. They're 10-0. The kid's, you know, got 2,700 yards. He's thrown 5 interceptions and he got 30 touchdowns. He's pretty much mowing teams over, but he's mowing teams over like Old Dominion, Indiana State. Iowa's a good team. They're a ranked team right now. They beat them 20-15. He had 233 yards passing against an Iowa defense. They beat the number 3 ranked Oregon. Oregon's a little low now, but at the time that they played them, they were a number 3 ranked Oregon football team. They beat them 30-20. Had 215 yards passing, and so on down the line. They beat UCLA, Michigan State, Maryland, Penn State, Wisconsin, and their next up this weekend is Purdue. So if you want to look at a kid that has all the talent, he has all the right people around him saying the right things, he's got a coach that says he's the next best thing, he's going to get himself a big contract. But watching him after the game, he's very excited. He looks very, I wouldn't say immature, but he looks like he's too nice. Now, you know what happens when nice guys come to the NFL? You know, sometimes they say nice guys finish last, but you have to be really, really exceptional to be a nice guy in the NFL. You have to have a little bit of fuck you in you. And I don't think that this kid, Fernando Mendoza, has enough fuck you in it to become the NFL, you know, number 1 quarterback of a professional football team. Will he gain it? Possibly. Let's see how he plays against Purdue, and let's see how he plays against a championship. If he can lead this team, this Indiana football team, to a national championship, I'd say Fernando Mendoza, smiles and all, he's kind of like Mamdami. Mamdami smiles, but you really know that he's a piece of shit down below. I'm not saying Mendoza's a piece of shit, but he smiles, but deep down, maybe he's a dog. Maybe he's got fight in him. Maybe he does want to get on that football field and play professional football and lead a football team to a Super Bowl eventually. Because I think at the end of the day, right now, that has got to be his mindset. And I understand he's got a Purdue team to face on Saturday that, let's be honest, he's probably going to throw for about 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And if they lock out that season with an 11-0 record, maybe they make it to a 1 seed or a 2 seed. We'll see how the other teams do this weekend. But the fact of the matter is Indiana is going to be playing for a national championship this year behind Fernando Mendoza. Now, if you're the New York Jets, do you look at this kid and do you take him as your first pick? Is the team that's going to have the first pick maybe the Tennessee Titans? Are they going to get a quarterback? Are they upset with Cam Ward? Do they think that he's going to be the future of that football team? I don't know. Cam Ward's been playing okay. He's not been playing to his expectations, but let's be honest. He's a freshman quarterback in the NFL. This is his first season, and maybe he need a little boost. Look at Bryce Young. The kid threw for 458 yards last week. He's starting to maybe make a staple as a quarterback in the NFL. But Cam Ward, who knows? Do they go and take another kid, Fernando Mendoza, get rid of Cam Ward? I don't think so. They're not gonna turn a blind eye to their pick from last year. So let's say the Jets have a top 3 pick. Giants looks like they're gonna have a top 3 pick too. They look like Jackson Dart might be the quarterback of their future. They're probably not gonna take a quarterback. So Jets get a 3rd or 4th pick. You're gonna have probably 2 of the 3 quarterbacks, possibly 2 of them looking at them in the face. You got another name by a kid by the name of Ty Simpson. And now Ty Simpson is the Ohio State quarterback, right? Now we all know how Ohio State quarterbacks play in the NFL. They win some and they lose some. They look great because they're from an Alabama program. That's amazing. They're very well coached. They're very well. Let's see, anybody looking here? Jamal High, the Jets scotch. So that's I love you. I love you too. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about quarterbacks for the New York Jets right now. Now, UCLA, like I said, Fernando Mendoza played well against. Lost my train of thought. I'm talking about Ty Simpson right now. See, I can't look at the comments and do a show at the same time. It's my ADD. We're going to go into that in another podcast. But now I got to focus directly on what I'm going to be talking about. Now, this kid, Ty Simpson, plays at Ohio State, and we all know Ohio State plays against over 100,000 people every single weekend. Now, I think that's got to be taken into account when you look at some of these quarterbacks, some and some not. Joe Burrow excelled as an NFL quarterback the minute he got in because he played at a big program. He played at LSU. But then look at a kid like Sunshine over there in Jacksonville. That kid's still waiting for his year, and I don't think it's going to come for him. I think that he is going to eventually find himself as a journeyman quarterback who played pretty good with Jacksonville, made the playoffs a couple of times. He's got 15 years in the NFL. And you know what, though? He made a career of it. But you know what, though? He wasn't the guy that played at Clemson. He wasn't the guy that lost to Joe Burrow. He just wasn't that guy. He never got it done, and he didn't do what he was supposed to do. He played well, made a career of it, but we looked at that guy like he was the second coming. Jets took Zach Wilson that year. We could have went and got him too. Who knows? Coaching, maybe something might have been different. But Ty Simpson, we're talking about him right now. It's his first season. He's been sacked 6 times this year. You know what that means? That means that his offensive line loves him. So it's going to allow him the time to throw the football. He's got 2,700 yards passing, 25 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Now, Alabama, that's a team with the other quarterback I'm about to talk about. They beat Ohio State. Now, Alabama's a tough team because, like I said, like these big programs, they all kind of get that big professional football atmosphere. They pack these big stadiums, but they still got to realize that there's men on the other side of the football that are trying to kill them. So you have Fernando Mendoza, you have Ty Simpson, and what's this other kid's name? So how much I watch college football. Ty Simpson, I don't know. But you're looking at 3 quarterbacks right now that the Jets could actually get their mitts on and maybe, bring a quarterback in here that's going to be here for a significant amount of time and kind of build a program. There was rumors today that Dabo was going to come and be an offensive coordinator for the Jets. I don't see that happening. That's kind of like silly talk because Dabo is going to go from a head coaching job in the Giants to take a demotion in the same building. I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do think is going to happen is Aaron Glenn has to start making decisions, not Woody Baby Powder Johnson. He has to stop making decisions. It's kind of like the Will Ponce had to stop making decisions for the Mets. They kind of starting to go in a different direction now because they sold the team to Steve Cohen, and that's for another podcast also. But he has to either A, sell this football team to somebody who cares, or keep his nose out of football decisions. Let the coaches coach. Let the GM do his job. The GM's doing an okay job. I don't know. He should probably be fired too. Let's just start from scratch, and let's just give maybe Aaron Glenn a little benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's a little overwhelmed this year. Lots of penalties. Lots of plays that could have went other way. He looked dumbfounded at times. Maybe he was dumbfounded because he didn't surround himself with the right people. I don't know the answer to that question, but the Jets have to do something. So Are they gonna maybe take one of these first round draft picks maybe and give them to possibly the Cincinnati Bengals, who might be a little upset with Joe Burrow because he gets hurt a lot? But then you get a quarterback who's almost a journeyman, who's almost a veteran. He's been around a couple of years. He's played in big games, didn't quite make it, but maybe it's just not the right and the proper atmosphere for him. Do we take these picks and do we trade them for Joe Burrow? Do we look at Tampa Bay and say, what do you got left in Baker Mayfield if he doesn't do it for them this year? Mac Jones? No. Does Jackson Dart leave the Giants? Do we swap first round picks? No, that's absolutely not an option either. The only option really to me would be Joe Burrow, and I don't think that's going to happen. So the Jets are going to have to do their due diligence and look at these college quarterbacks because one of these three guys is going to be the future of the New York Jets. They're going to have to pick up maybe another wide receiver, maybe. They're going to have to pick up a defensive lineman, possibly. But the fact of the matter is, next year in 2026, the Jets have second round draft pick. They have Dallas's second round. They have 2 first round picks and 2 fourth round picks and a 6th round pick. So you know what has to happen? The Jets have to do something next year and make a splash. Listen, they made a splash 2 years ago and got 3 people that I didn't think that they were going to get. 2 of them, Brees Hall, good. He's working out a little bit, but he doesn't seem to have a little bit of the oomph that maybe he should have. Sauce Gardner gone. Garrett Wilson, maybe he's just being patient. But you know what, Jets? Get the right kid from the right college, the right program with the right attitude to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson. And then you're going to have a big star on your hands. Well, that's my Jets talk, and that's the local talk, and that's kind of like, how I feel, and I feel what the Jets are. The Jets are going to get beat this weekend by a significant margin. They're going to lose. They're going to lose big. And that's just is what it is. And I don't mind that. I'll watch the football game. I'll see if there's some kind of like new stuff they're trying. If there's some young players that might have some talent. But other than that, I'm going to probably watch the Jets get the shit beat out of them by Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. I watched a documentary the other day. I was kind of flipping through the channels. I like to kind of look at different stuff, and see what's going on. I just feel like I watch the same things over and over and over and over again. But I did a video where I talked about CTE a couple of weeks ago. As a matter of fact, on my last podcast, I talked about how Tua should kind of quit football because I think that, some of his stuff, some of it, the way he's acting, maybe it could be attributed to CTE, the whole thing with his hands, a couple of years ago. But CTE is a big problem. It's a big problem all over the place. I mean, look at all these former WWF wrestlers, WWE wrestlers that have killed their spouses, that have committed suicide. It's just like, soccer players get it, hockey players get it. You name your sport. If you get hit in the head, boxers, UFC, if your brain rattles around in your head for a significant amount of time, it doesn't even have to cause a concussion. It literally just has to be that little bit of rattle. You're going to eventually get some kind of brain damage. I watched a documentary about a man named Lew Carpenter. Now, Lew Carpenter was a football player that played in the 50s, 60s, and part of the 70s, went on to be a successful coach in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers and with the Philadelphia Eagles. His daughter, Rebecca, did a documentary called Requiem for a Running Back. Now, this is on Amazon Prime. If you want to look it up, it's a very, very telling documentary because the way we look at CTE right now is we're looking at these present day players. We're looking at the Junior Seaus. We're looking at the guy that shot up the NFL office the other day. We're looking at, Tua. We're looking at all these people that are being diagnosed with CTE. Junior Seau, like I said before, and the list goes on and on and on. I'll talk about a couple of these specific cases in a couple of minutes, but we rarely think about the players that played back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and, the leather helmet days, because CTE is now you have, look, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but basically in layman's terms is you have a protective shell or protective membrane around your brain that's supposed to protect it from outside stuff getting in to messing up your brain chemistry. When your brain rattles around a little bit in your head, little tiny little punctures, little tiny minuscules, maybe little tight blood gets in here and there, and it starts to kind of mess up your brain chemistry a little bit. And this, this stuff kind of like attacks different parts of the brain. Some, get very forgetful, early dementia. But anyway, even this day and age with all these players that have all this protective equipment, they're still getting it. And they're still being diagnosed with it because up until a couple of years ago, this really wasn't even being recognized by the NFL as that actual sport causing concussions and causing CTE up until 2016. So Lew Carpenter played in the 50s. He won 3 championships with the Detroit Lions. Okay. He was a very good football player. He was a running back. He had a family, loved his family. He had daughters. He's married, lived in Milwaukee, lived in Green Bay, loved Green Bay, played for the great Vince Lombardi, won Super Bowls with Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi is, he tell the stories. He was, probably a hard guy to play for, I would assume, as were a lot of those men back then, because it was hard men back then. There was no, water breaks or anything like that. You just got there to play fucking football and beat the shit out of somebody. That's the kind of era that these men came from. So what was kind of happening is Lew Carpenter, he retires from football and he gets a coaching job, like I said, with the Green Bay Packers, becomes the head coach. Football's his life. Back at home, things are starting to change a little bit. He's very quick, tempered. Rebecca, his daughter, who did this documentary and it was amazing at it. I mean, told me so much stuff that I didn't even know. I didn't even think about, with ththese players back in this, in the 50s and the 60s and 70s. But she would tell it from a perspective of a daughter and would tell it from a perspective of they interviewed the mom. They interviewed these people who are a direct part of this person's life, who witnessed firsthand significant changes in the way they were acting. Now, when they would come home and they would be away from other football players or other what they know, because a lot of these men, that was all they knew. So when they came home, they were out of their element and maybe something pissed them off. Rebecca tells a story about how her mom went out one night with a couple of her friends. And I guess, she told everybody was supposed to know. But from what I understand, he came home and threw a tantrum and started, throwing stuff all over the place because, who was she to go out? She's a whore and just saying all these crazy things about the wife, who was a very good wife. Reason she wanted to get out of the house a little bit because the husband was acting a little weird, and the kind of the family from there kind of got a little bit kind of, you know, they were getting, further and further apart because of the way Lou was acting. But again, back then, nobody thought that football could have been the answer to all these problems. She ran into somebody named Greg Lenz. Greg Lenz was a football player back then too. Greg Lenz has a story about his wife would go to the store, and when she would leave, he would go outside and get a shotgun, and he would stand there, and he would have the gun pointed to the house. And when the wife would come home, she would just come in like nothing happened. One day, the cops were called because somebody said that somebody was out in front of the Lenz house with a gun, and the wife just said, "Oh, that's fine. That's just Greg. He's not going to do anything. Don't worry about it." Little bit, that Greg wasn't pointing the gun at his house. He was pointing the gun and turned around and finally killed himself, which is absolutely terrible because the pain that must have been going on in that man's head because he didn't know what was going on must have been so, just beyond the realm of what we even think about, men could endure. So this is a big problem for Rebecca and her family. Eventually, he goes on, like I said, he becomes the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And she does this interview as a young girl back in 19, I want to say it was 1996. And he looked like his eyes looked like very distant. She was asking him questions. He was forgetting stuff. And he was kind of coming to the downturn of this chronic encephalopathy. Look at me trying, like I said, I'm not a scientist, but the fact of the matter is he was gone. He was leaving the whole time, but he had football to fall back on. But the fact that his brain every day was just leaving, he didn't want to be around anybody, but he wanted to be by himself. He felt down on himself. And eventually it just got too much to a point where back in 2007, he finally susceptible to this nasty disease. It just ate his brain away. Ironically, in 2007 is the first time really that there was kind of like a congressional hearing on CTE against the NFL. And these players that were in front of Congress was kind of like, remember with the steroid era when they went in front of Congress, this is kind of just guys trying to get health benefits for retired football players. Now I know in the past, I don't know if anybody's seen anything on Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell was known as being one of the fiercest running backs ever. The poor man cannot get out of a seated position. That's just physical stuff. The mental stuff causes so much burden on other people around them because a lot of times these men don't even know what's happening to them. And a lot of times it gets to a point where they don't even know what's happening and they're hurting their family members and listen, one of the biggest stories of CTE, is Aaron Hernandez. And you see what happened with Aaron Hernandez. Aaron Hernandez was a psycho and he was getting hit in the head for years and years and years. And his brain, when he died, was riddled with CTE. So just imagine what some of these men back in the day were going through, not having the proper headgear, not having the proper, you know, whatever to protect their brains. So you think that depression was terrible among men back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it's bad today, but they really had no kind of help because they really didn't think it was a thing. And up until 2016 is when they finally said, you know what? The game of football is causing these men to have chronic, Jesus Christ, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. There, I got it. Listen, I made it sound like I was an idiot, but you know what though? This is a really bad thing because in front of Congress, Dave Duerson went up there. Dave Duerson later committed suicide. As a matter of fact, he wrote a note that said he shot himself in the chest because they wanted to keep his brain to be studied because he knew something was wrong. And this laundry list, Mike Webster, Vincent Jackson, a man named Philip Adams, after killing 6 people, turned a gun on himself and murdered himself, committed suicide after murdering 6 people. We all know the story about Junior Seau, one of the nicest guys ever to put on a football helmet. All of a sudden, the guy started acting like fucking batshit crazy, and then he committed suicide. This Frank Gifford. Listen, I know Frank Gifford died very old, but they looked at his brain, stage 4 CTE. Poor Mike Webster, John Mackey. Tony Dorsett said that his family at times was afraid of him, and he didn't know why. It's Tony Dorsett, one of the greatest running backs of all time. Mike Lenz, O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson showed showed everybody that you don't have to look depressed. You don't have to look like a psychopath to be a murderer. Now, I don't know if it was CTE that made him kill those people, but he's a murderer. And I don't know if it was CTE that affected a different part of his brain that made him do that. But listen, Philip Adams murdered 6 people. He had CTE. O.J. Simpson murdered his wife and her boyfriend. A little bit of jealousy, yeah. A little bit of brain damage, yeah. But you know what, though? He's dead now, too. And he had CTE. They looked at his brain. A.J. Dewey, the guy that ruined my day in 1982 by intercepting Richard Todd, he had it too. Kenny Stabler, Andre Waters. The list goes on and on and on. On and on and on. I love the NFL. I love football. And there's always going to be men willing to put those helmet and shoulder pads on. Parents are kind of looking at this as, do I really want my child to become a football player? Football, I think, has become more of, it's not like everybody just goes to play football. Football right now is in your blood. I think if you're going to become a football player right now, it's in your blood and it's just something that you do. Unlike other things or some like other things, you just do it. As a matter of fact, this documentary I just saw, his grandson right now is a high school football player playing at a high level, getting looked at by D1 colleges. Rebecca, the one that did the documentary, this is her son. And she says, I have to be okay with it because this is what he wants to do. He says he trusts the doctors, he trusts his coaches, and he trusts everybody around him. It has to be a way of life for people to play football these days. Because you know what? At the end of the day, suicide, murders, Aaron Hernandez, it definitely has something to do with their brain chemistry being fucked up. Listen, a lot of these guys maybe have other things going on, when, you know, like I said, a lot of mental health. Maybe they had trauma as a kid, but getting the brains beat in on a daily basis really is not going to help that. So I do not want to see football go away. I do not want to see football turn into flag football because that alone will just become a game that really just people aren't going to watch it because we like the violence. We like the hard hits. We like seeing people compete and be dominant. It's like the modern day gladiators. These guys get into an arena and they beat the living shit out of each other for 3.5 hours for our enjoyment. I love it. I hope it doesn't go away. I feel terribly for these men that are getting this vicious, vicious brain disease. I don't know what we can do about it. I don't know if there's going to be something we even can do about it. But if you enjoy watching football, enjoy it watching now because I don't think this is going to be the same game in 20 years because way too many things are happening to these ex football players, as wrestlers, as soccer players, as you name your game. Because I'm just doing this on football. I'm about to start talking to you about Vietnam veterans and veterans of foreign war and post 9/11 veterans. You know, there's got to be some sort of CTE maybe going on there that causes the PTSD and all these letters because something's going on there as well that we need to look into. As far as football, I guess enjoy football right now while you can because I don't know if it's going to be the same game in 20 years because a lot of parents aren't letting their kids play football, and a lot of dads are kind of second guessing or maybe going with the flow. But you know what, though? At the end of the day, football is a dangerous sport. Hockey's a dangerous sport. These are all dangerous things that these people do. I'm an iron worker. I have a dangerous job, but we do it. So until people stop doing it, let's just enjoy watching the NFL. All right. Veterans Day. All right. Now, this is where I'm kind of going to put the notes away. Sorta. I got a couple of notes I got to do here. I did a video the other day about Veterans Day. Now, I said that Veterans Day should be a national holiday, and a family member of mine corrected me and said it is. But it's not a national holiday like I think it should be. Now, when I say national holiday, I think it should be like Christmas. It should be like Easter. It should be like Thanksgiving. It should be like maybe the 4th of July. You name your holiday when the stores are closed and you can't the only thing you could really do is maybe go to the park with your family or maybe spend some time with your friends or kind of kick back and just be like take a breath and chill. Those are the days I mean that are national holidays. Thanksgiving's coming up. What are we doing the morning of Thanksgiving? We're just preparing to be with our families. Everything's closed. We can't go anywhere. Christmas. I guess some stuff is open because, it's kind of a split holiday. Hanukkah's around the same time. But you know what, though? For the most part, everything shuts down for Christmas. Unless you want to go to a Chinese food restaurant, like my old partner E Dubs used to say. That's right. My old partner E Dubs used to say Chinese food restaurants are open on Christmas for a reason. The Jews love Chinese food on Christmas. So there you go. So if you don't want Veterans Day to be a national holiday, if you, for some reason, you don't think that they deserve to have a day all for themselves to say, not even just say, I'm not even saying have a parade. I'm not even saying have banners strung along saying thank you for your service. Maybe some of them want to, maybe don't. But I just think it's a day when they wake up, they know that everything is closed and you can't go to the store and you can't go to the bank and you're not going to get mail for that one day because of them, because we're remembering what they did for our country. That's it, guys. I think it should be a open and shut case. Veterans Day should be a national holiday where everything's shut down. I guess maybe some people maybe disagree with that. I don't know. But the amount of people that are coming into this country and bringing their own culture here, not going to get into that right now. That's going to be for Saturday morning's podcast. But the amount of people bringing their culture here that's not American is probably lowering the sentiment a little bit with the people around this country that kind of hate America right now. So throwing out the fact that Veterans Day should be a national holiday and everything should be shut down. Yeah, I do agree with that. Is the sentiment maybe yes or no? I don't know because who knows what culture we're going to be following in the next couple of years in this country and let alone New York City. And again, that's going to be for my podcast tomorrow. Veterans Day should definitely be a holiday where everybody is looked after. I have some friends that are veterans. I'm an iron worker, local 580. We have a lot of veterans post 9/11 veterans, Vietnam veterans, proud iron workers. We have veterans of all foreign wars, men and women in the trades throughout New York City and throughout the country. We have a Helmets to Hard Hats program that if you spent time in the military and you are a veteran, we're going to give you ample help to get a great job building New York City or pick your state, pick your locality. It's a great program. As a matter of fact, I think some of the best apprentices have come to that program because they're used to doing stuff that's hard. And not only is the work hard that happens when these men and women go away and fight for, I guess, our country, fight for our way of life, or just fight for whatever they're just told to do because they're in the military. I don't think that's easy. As a matter of fact, it can't be easy. Let's take Vietnam, for instance. Now, my dad was a Vietnam veteran. I'm going to get into that in a couple of minutes and never talked about it ever. What I do know is that 94,500 suicides recorded from 1979 to the year 2019 of Vietnam veteran. And that's not to mention the enormous amount of mental health burdens. I have to plug my computer in, so you're gonna have to give me a second. Great time for that to happen. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you do stuff live. 94,500 recorded Vietnam veteran suicides, numerous homeless, numerous mental health. This is people's dads, moms, uncles, aunts, coworkers, friends. I have a specific friend of mine that embarrassingly I haven't spoke to in about a couple months, but I consider him a very good friend. And he is a veteran. I'm not going to mention his name or where he fought, but he used to tell me stories of the circle of friends that he keeps that are all veterans, same platoon, maybe just same era, that they would just talk and, bounce stories off each other and kind of keep each other sane. He would tell me a story about somebody who had committed suicide because they just couldn't take it. He would tell me stories about, you know, how they would just kind of like take their minds off it temporarily just so they could become parents, fathers, mothers. It's a really hard thing to separate because when you're in a place that you go to and you don't speak the language, and they give you a gun and you're told to just go do what you got to do, be men and women. So then they go off and they fight in these wars. And a lot of them, I guess, don't really know. I mean, Platoon is one of my all-time favorite movies. The speech at the end of Platoon by Charlie Sheen is very, very, very gripping. If you want to go back and if I was a little more prepared, I would have pulled it up and showed it to you. But that speech that Charlie Sheen says at the end of Platoon kind of says it all. Nobody recognizes the fact that there's a large number of men and women in this country that need help. Large number. Some succumb to suicide. Some have enormous amounts of PTSD that they drive themselves crazy every single day, dragging themselves out of bed to just have some sort of a normal life. We spend so much time in this country vilifying stuff, like vilifying wars and vilifying everybody, just vilifying people in general, vilifying other countries. You know, we give an enormous amount of money to countries that don't give a shit about us. When I say stuff callous like I don't care what's going on there, it's not that I don't care. I think we should redirect our focus and realize that not only are there all these veterans that need help, there's people in this country that are homeless, that are crazy, that are sick, that have alcoholism, that are addicted to drugs. I mean, there's people in this country that need help, and there's billions and billions of dollars. So this isn't a one side or another side connection that I'm trying to bring here. I'm trying to bring a human connection into the fact that these veterans should be taken care of. They should not have to worry about a damn thing when they come back from a foreign land fighting a war that they really didn't know why they were fighting it. They would just know go kick ass. And they did. And some of them didn't come back. A lot of them didn't come back. A lot of them died. I mean, that's why when you see somebody that burns the American flag, now it's one of two people that are burning the American flag in this country here. You got your people that came here from another country burning our flag on our soil that are not even born here, telling us that we need to change. Then you have the people that live in this country that are burning the American flag because they say they want change. How about all of you look at the American flag and realize what it stands for? It stands for millions of men and women that fought wars for you. Not the other ones that come here and say that we're warmongers, that say that we're sticking our nose and this, that, and the other thing. Whatever your policy is or whatever whatever your take is on war, put that aside and realize that there's human beings that were told to go do that. Human beings. Vietnam veterans were drafted and told to go to Vietnam. They were pulled out of high school. They pulled their number, gave them a gun, and said, now go fight the Vietnamese. Why? I don't know. We still don't know. Is it for pharmaceutical companies to get a head start on their opioids? I don't know. All I do know is that those men and women that fought those wars are brave and they fought for our country. And the symbol of the United States of America is the American flag. Whether you're a Black American, a white American, a gay American, a Spanish American, pick your gender, pick your whatever, pick your biological whatever. If you were born in this country or if you came here and did it the way you're supposed to, that is the symbol of your country. And is the only thing that, in my eyes, that separates or brings together everything. And the embarrassment of watching people that were born on this soil desecrate the American flag drives me absolutely insane. You could have your protests, which is fine. It's one of you have the right to. We all have the right to. But to burn the American flag is just outright a spit in the face to my dad, my grandfather, all my friends, all my family members, and everyone out there that has somebody that they know either died or is home fighting these wars. That is a direct spit in their face. Now, I think there's got to be something done about veteran suicide. And that's just the bottom line. I watched I'm going to talk about my dad a little bit now. I don't know where this is going to go, but I just have a couple of things I'd like to say. Like I said, he's a Vietnam veteran. And what they did in their respective wars and battles, nobody could ever minimize the amount of sacrifice that those men and women put themselves through, leaving their families, leaving their friends, being 18 and not even just barely being able to drink, not even being able to drink. Back then, you could at 18. Now, these kids going to war, they can't even drink. When my father passed about a year and a half ago, And when he passed, I I did a whole thing about how I kind of lost my marbles a couple years ago, and I'm gonna I'll go into that another time, where you could actually I'm gonna connect the video from about 3 years ago, where I kind of like laid it all out there, what I was going through, and you know I had a moment of, I wouldn't even say clarity. I had a moment of why at the wrong time, and I'll admit that it was the wrong time to have my moment of why, because I hurt a lot of people's feelings, namely my father. But never can I look back, and never can I have regret, because I don't. I loved my dad. My dad had his faults, like I have my faults. But I do want to talk about one fight that we had gotten into probably about 3 or 4 months prior to him passing. I was, staying with him. I think my mother had been at the hospital at the time, and I went over there to go stay with my dad for a couple of nights to make sure he was going to be okay. Now, this whole time, I could go into that a lot more, but this whole time is like, all right, it's a lot of alcoholism in my family, and these are just going to be the times that, like, we really reassess, and like, let's start to get healthy. And maybe that attributed to a lot of the stuff that I was going through. But he was upstairs, and, knocking back his Budweisers, which is, just couldn't understand why I just couldn't stop, which is, I guess I understand and I don't understand, because I did have this vision of alcoholism not being a disease, and being able to, you could stop anytime you want. Throughout this whole thing, like, alcoholism is a ravenous disease, and it destroys family, and it destroys people. And this is just something that it is what it is. And I was staunch about it being something that you could just stop, and it's not. So this specific night, you know, I guess he was kind of being a little sarcastic, because, we had a good night the night before. He wanted to see a movie. We watched a movie. It was a good night. Hammered, put him to bed. Fine. Next day, woke up, started drinking a couple beers. I'm like, all right, whatever. I left, came back. So I'm downstairs, and I hear him stumbling around upstairs. So I hear him bump into something. So I come upstairs. He's a little, he's had a couple beers. So he's stumbling, he's sick. Because mind you, this is about 3 months before he passed, so he's sick. My mother is too. She's in the hospital, and the reason I'm staying there is because I'm staying with him, make sure he's okay. So I don't know what sparked the argument, or I don't know, kind of like, maybe he just, you know, one thing that he probably could have done a better job at. He probably could have done a better job communicating how he felt, and that was probably very hard for him. And I think I have a hard time to this day communicating certain things that I'm feeling, maybe because of that. But bottom line is, maybe the conversation that we had that night could have been communicated a little bit differently, but I chose to get mad. And I would tell him, it's like, you know what? I said, you have no idea. You tell us about all this stuff. It's like, you have no idea what me and my three sisters kind of went through living with you for all these years. Or when we did live, sometimes not knowing if you were going to make it home, seeing you, fight with our mother, or seeing our mother fight with you, or kind of just seeing a lot of stuff that maybe could have been avoided if alcohol wasn't involved. And I just could not, for the life of me, think why he wouldn't stop. And I'm always reminded of the fact that my father grew up at a time where there really wasn't much love in his house. As he got older, I'd say probably, yeah, but there was a lot of kids and really not that much money. Living in the Bronx, Brook Avenue, went to go live with his grandmother. Really didn't have any kind of stability at a young age. Went to Vietnam at 18. 18 years old, he went to Vietnam. After he got out, Vietnam, that had to be terribly, terribly hard for him. Became an iron worker for about 6 months. Iron worker got kind of slow. My grandfather says, I'm going to keep Michael. He's going to work with, me and your uncles. You go take the New York City police officer test to become a cop. My father takes a New York City police officer test. Boom, comes a New York City police officer. Comes a New York City police officer at a time when the city is just fucking crazy. Worked in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn in the early 80s. And if anybody knows the stories, it was crazy. A lot of corruption, a lot of craziness. Now, I always tell a funny story that I know my dad wasn't a corrupt cop because at that time there was a lot of corrupt cops in his area, but we didn't have shit growing up. So I know my dad wasn't stealing any money, and I know my dad was on the straight and narrow, and he was a good cop and he was a good soldier. I had said to him, I said, "You have no idea what it's like to grow up with somebody like you. You know, you went to war, and we always hear about how, poor you, not minimizing the fact that what he did. I think what I was doing, and I'm realizing now, a year and a half after the fact, and this is kind of like my only, like, I guess maybe regret. Maybe he just couldn't. Maybe stuff was so bad for him. Maybe he did stuff and did things and witnessed stuff that I would never in a million years couldn't even imagine some of the stuff that he might have seen in his life. And I minimized that. I minimized the fact that he could take that experience for about 40 years of his life and just put it on the shelf. Just say, all right, we'll attack that another time. I'm just going to be a good dad and I'm just going to be, I'm everything. I'm not going to be an alcoholic. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to have depression. I'm not going to have loss. I'm not going to have torture. I'm not going to have any of this. I'm just going to be a dad. Very easy for me to say that that's my top priority. I'm a dad. I love my boys immensely. I didn't have Vietnam. I didn't have the New York City Police Department in Brooklyn in the 80s, in the 90s. I didn't have the loss that he had. I didn't have the nightmares that he had. I didn't have the regrets that he had. I can only watch a man slowly deteriorate through his life because the only outlet that he had was to drink. And was the drinking to stop the nightmares? Was the drinking to stop the thoughts of, dare I say, suicide? I don't know. But I go back to that night and I think about the fact that I wish I could tell him I wasn't minimizing his sacrifice that he did. I wasn't minimizing that. I was minimizing his ability to take all of that pain and put it away while he raised children. That's the one thing that I regret. Everything else, we had a great conversation. We talked about a lot of stuff. You know, we had our relationship was what it was, you know, and I think a lot of my feelings towards him was a lot of why this, why that, and why can I look at my children and they're the greatest thing I've ever seen or ever done, and I would die for them, and he would have died for me too. He would have died for my sisters. He would have died for my mother. He just had a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that he didn't know how to deal with. He had brothers and sisters who missed him terribly. His parents, luckily, died before he did. They were in their 90s. My dad died in his 70s. Now, physical pain that he probably woke up with every day with the hangovers and stuff like that probably couldn't compare to what mentally he was going through. Now, I would tell him, smoke some weed, or I would tell him, do this, do that. But he's old school. He would never have done that. Maybe if there's psychedelic therapy, which seems to be helping some of these veterans today, like ibogaine and ketamine treatment, seems to be helping a lot of these veterans. And if anybody does get a chance to listen to this podcast and they are a veteran and they are doing ketamine or ibogaine therapy, I would love to talk to you. I have so many questions. You could contact me at keeptalking365 at Gmail. Any veterans out there listening, I would love to talk to you. When I first started this podcast, that was the initial thing that I wanted to start doing. I wanted to start talking to podcasts. I wanted to try to understand my dad more. I wanted to understand why my dad did the things that he did. And it wasn't stuff that was done because it was malicious. It was done as distractions. He distracted himself and destroyed physically what he had too early, cancer. And you would think sometimes that, like, there's so much family that surrounded him, like our family. I went a little crazy back then, and I kinda, somebody said to me the other day, what happened, or I was talking to somebody, and, I said, "I opened up a lot of doors," and I said, "These doors are open, and they're not gonna be closed until they're closed." And I guess maybe I caused a lot of hurt. I caused some pain, but I think it was stuff that needed to come out, and I think I'm better because of it. But I do think back to that night specifically when I minimized his ability to take his feelings and put them off to the side to become a dad, when in actuality, the horror and the nightmares that he was going through, probably I couldn't in a million years fathom. Now, he was our dad, and I miss him because, there was good stuff about him. He was funny. I'm very sarcastic. I'm very quick. I'm very charismatic. People have told me I could talk to anybody, and I get that from him. And alcohol just through the years just kind of like made that disappear from him. I go to work, people like me. I mean, they say they do anyway. think I'm uh I think I'm somebody that can carry a conversation with anybody. Like I said, my dad was very charismatic, but he lost that somewhere. And I think that was the thing that bothered me the most because a lot of my good qualities I saw in him, but he just could not get to a point where the demons were enough to be. He was a good dad. I'm not saying he wasn't a good dad. He was a great dad. Just to be more present. And I no longer am angry with him for that. It took me a little while. And that was just the anger part of it. Like, when I say, like, I had nobody teach me how to fight, I had to learn that on my own. I tell a story about I said to my parents one day, is like, I'm not even mad at you guys anymore. I'm just disappointed. And the both of them turned and looked at me and says, "Don't you think that we're a little disappointed?" That was a turning point in our relationship, I think, a little bit, because the fact that I looked at both of my parents and said, "The fact that you guys are disappointed in me when I really had nobody giving me direction, I made mistakes on my own." I think I'm pretty proud about that. So to use that word disappointment, I look at that day as kind of like a turning point in our relationship. And my dad died about it 6 or 7 months after that conversation. And we tried to talk and, you know, we would kind of talk through my mom. I told him that, in a heat of a argument that, I used to listen to the way he used to talk to my mom. But, let's be honest, my mom was kind of like, she was right there with him too. Everything was okay the next day, but that was just, an Irish Catholic family growing up in Queens. I think the stuff that me and my sisters kind of went through, you know, listen, man, like, people have it bad, man. There was no physical abuse, none, no physical, you know, just like the mental thing. Kinda like, the games, kinda like the what kind of mood are they gonna be in? What kind of mood is he gonna be in? "Don't tell dad." It's just kinda that kinda stuff, and that grew into something. My grandmother, when I was 5 years old, knitted me something, and it said, "My dad is my best pal." At one point in my life, and in our lives, we were best pals, and I don't know what happened to that, or maybe it just took a little hiatus, but eventually something happened where it was became anger, then it became relief, and then it became sadness, and now it's just back to kind of relief a little bit because I know the conversation that we had, and I know what happened, and this is gonna sound kinda morbid, I guess, but people know what I'm gonna say about, we knew my father was gonna pass, we knew it. It was kinda like a joke, it was, like, kinda 3 times in, like, 2 weeks. "Oh, come on over, dad's da tonight's the night," and wasn't the night. Another time, my sister called me, "Oh, mommy wants to come over, dad's not doing too good. He'd get better." And then there was that night that I got the phone call from my sister Megan, and I knew that that was gonna be the night. It was just a different air, a different tone, "Just come here quick," and I did. Um, I don't know if anybody knows what it's like to watch their parent pass. Uh, we all dealt with it in our own way. I feel that us being there with my mom watching it happen was better than him just like, waking up on a random Tuesday and my mom, "Oh my god," knowing that it was gonna happen was kinda like, I guess, maybe a little added bonus maybe because I guess we could talk to him and because he could definitely hear, he was cognizant, he couldn't talk, he had a breathing tube in his nose, and he was probably about, maybe 65 pounds, 70 pounds, just laying in his bed, you know, in and out, dozing off, giving him his morphine. My sister's discussing when and where and how much they should give him, you know, keep him out of pain. That's what it was. So it's getting late night, through the night, want to talk to, my sisters would be on his chest and talking to him and my mom and came to a point where he pushed them all away. And I knew it. I was watching him, and it's a room full of women and me. And me being the man in the room, knowing what he's thinking. Rich, will you please please get them away. I can't bear to look at their eyes anymore knowing I'm gonna pass. Can you please come here and let me hug you for the last time? Because you know what I'm feeling right now. And I did. I hugged him for the last time. And listen, they swear, my sister Megan swears that he said, "My pal." And he gave me kind of like, I put his hand up and he kind of like, I hugged him. I told him I loved him. I told him that it was okay. Um, I think that maybe at the end of the day was pretty much all he really wanted to hear was that it was okay. Then we kind of sat down at 3 o'clock in the morning. My sister nudged me and said, "He's gone. He had passed, and his pain was over." They really talked about this out loud. And like I said, I do this podcast because it's very therapeutic for me. And I don't mind, you know, people getting into my life and, maybe I could help somebody. You know, I haven't gone to see him. He's all the way out in Long Island. Um, I feel that, we know where each other lie. And that's my story. I mean, we could talk about stuff, that happened in those 3 years of my kinda, like, my, I guess, nervous breakdown, if you would say, but I'm good now. I'm better now, but it took a lot, but I'm back. Been about a year, and I'm feeling a lot better. About a year and a half of a little bit of a mental decline, but I was able to catch myself, and I had a very, very, very amazing support cast and my wife and my 2 kids. And anybody out there that think that there's anything else in the world more important than your family, than your wife or your husband and your children, if you're lucky enough to have kids and you're lucky enough to have a supportive spouse, that is the best unbreakable unit possible. The war must have been so bad. Being a cop must have been so bad. Dwelling, reaching out for help inside, but never actually saying the words must have been so hard. That priority was kind of pushed aside. And again, I need to stress that it was not all bad. He took me to Met games, he took me to football games, he took me to baseball games, circus, we'd have catches outside. The catches stopped maybe when I was around 12, but I do remember 6, 7 being out in the middle of the street having a catch with my dad. And I do say a father and son having a catch is the greatest form of bonding that you could actually have. Even if you don't play baseball, even if you know nothing about the sport, get a glove, get a baseball, and bring your son outside and have a catch, because that right there is time. And I think that I just said a word that I think that is wherein lies what I think I'm most upset about is I wish I would just had more cognizant time where he wasn't being the selfish alcoholic that the alcoholics are, where he was being him, where he was being that charismatic father, he was being that charismatic friend. Everybody loved him. I think I went to a policeman fireman hockey game, and we went to the bar afterwards, and it was filled with cops and firemen. And I saw some guy grab my dad, he kissed him right on the lips, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" It's like, "What's going on here?" And then I tell the story about it being at a union meeting one night, and I'm well into my 10 years of being an iron worker, and I see my friend grabs me, gives me a kiss right on the cheek, and at that moment I look back and I says, "Oh my god, like I'm my dad. People like me." So the good qualities, if you think I'm a funny guy, if you think I'm charismatic, if you think I can hold a conversation, if you think what you think about me, the good qualities, they were there at one point, and I observed them, and I'm taking them with me. So, Dad, told you I was going to talk about you tonight, and I think I've been putting this podcast off for a little while because I didn't want to know the proper sending for you. Even when you were mad at me, you watched this podcast on Facebook. Even if I had 0 viewers, which I don't have many viewers now, but trying. You were watching and you were listening, even when you were mad at me, even when I was mad at you and we weren't talking. My mother told me it was your way of just hearing my voice. So, Dad, this is for you. I love you. And we're going to make Veterans Day a national holiday so you can look down and be proud. So, we're going to try and make it a national holiday. All right, guys. I've talked to you guys about an hour. It's like this is Keep Talking 365. I'm going to do another podcast on Saturday morning where we're going to get into some more of my political opinions. We're going to talk about Mom Donnie and what's going on in New York City. We're going to talk about Kathy Hochul standing underneath a sign that says "Tax the Rich." You're worth $25 million between you and your husband. We're going to talk about a new gambling site, but it's not a gambling site. It's a future projection, whatever site. Kashi. What's going on? Can this be influenced? I have my thoughts on Kashi as well. Load management in the NBA. I'm going to get on that a little bit because I was really vehemently against it. I thought a lot of these players were being pussies. It seems like it's the owners. We're going to talk about that Saturday morning as well. So join Keep Talking 365 at YouTube. Please pass this word on. Hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to build here. I'm getting enough, I'm trying to get more and more time. I'm going to retire soon, year and a half, and I'll be able to do this every single day. I just got to get stuff to talk about. There's no reason why, and there's no topic not worth talking about. So keep talking 365 at YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Thanks a lot, guys.